I'm watching a couple of videos about language, most particularly Professor Anton's videos. I have to say I don't understand all of those videos. It's not my field, and I don't have I was going to say time, but it's probably patience, if I'm honest, to dedicate to really get an understanding of that. Shame to admit it, but it's true. And the other video was one that Iron Myth Per, Nuclear Night. Is Iron Myth Per? Is that like a homonym? Is it supposed to sound like something when it's pronounced? Iron Myth Per, like Isle of View. You know what I mean? If you say Isle of View quickly, it sounds like I love you. Is it one of those? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, she did one on kind of the politics of language use and exclusionary language and discounting language. Both really interesting bits of stuff. So I'm just thinking about language as a substrate through which we move. This is just metaphorical and poetic, imaginary stuff. It's not real. Because when we come in, because I'm just kind of imagining it as an allegory for this experience that I'm having now, which is like walking through a woods, or more accurately, kind of being born, being alive for 70 years or whatever, and then dying. Because I've also got death in my mind after watching Laura Layla's video yesterday. And that's that kind of 40 years and 10 thing that we go through. Because what happens when you're born and you live, sorry it's raining, what happens when you're born and you live and you die, in physical terms, is you kind of, you come into the world made out of some atoms that were part of your mother, and before they were part of your mother, they were part of the food that your mother ate, and before they were part of that, they were part of some other life form in all likelihood, going right back to stardust. But you come into this world made out of the atoms that preceded you, and then you consume the atoms that are around you and absorb the atoms through your food and your drink, and shed the atoms in the form of skin cells and in the form of feces and urine and sweat and semen and tears and all that kind of stuff. So all the atoms kind of go through you, and you do that for about, let's say, 70 years. So you're like this really slow moving fountain, of meat and atoms, where the atoms just kind of pour through you in this really slow way. And then eventually more atoms fall out of you than fall in, and the atoms break down, the metabolic processes stop, and all of the atoms and molecules just disintegrate and disseminate and go back into the streams again, into the pool of atoms that other life forms are absorbing and creating themselves out of. So that's kind of what's happening. And I think something analogous to that happens with language. Because in the same way that the atoms and the molecules which will ultimately make up your body precede you and have been there since the beginning of time in those cases, or since the beginning of the formation of elements at least, since those atoms have been around for a long, long time prior to your arrival, and will stay around after your death. So similarly language, language is around before you're born. People are speaking these words, and the rules of grammatical construction are around before you're born, and the relationship between these words and these sounds and these sentences and these phrases, and the relationships between one and another, and also the relationships between those things and the reference that they point toward, that's all there before you arrive. And then as you're born, you kind of move into this stuff, and it becomes part of you, you know what I mean? You describe yourself with it, and you think with it, and you express yourself with it, and you kind of obey those language rules for a while, those grammatical constructions, and your narrative self kind of builds up around that, your expressed self, and expressed relationships, and the expressed relationships between yourself and the reference to which you point out, here am I and there is a tree. All those kind of things build up. So you're like this slow moving fountain of language that just kind of gradually moves through the world. Yeah, it changes a little bit. New words do come in occasionally, and old words go out, and they fall off the ends of your vocabulary, new ones come in. But more or less, it just keeps flowing. and then you get to the end and the words fall away and you get more and more silent. But the words just kind of stay around, and they become part of someone else's vocabulary and part of someone else's phraseology, and someone else picks them up and they become part of the next narrative self that's constructed and expressed. Yeah. If that makes any sense. Maybe. How does I turn this off? I got that.